couple years ago, Raj jumped on the phone with me and he mentioned this statement and it's stuck in my brain so hard that my team probably got sick of hearing it. I said it over and over again all the time. And that statement is understanding today versus tomorrow as a business leader, right? And for me, that really meant how do I operate, right? Outside of my team, what is my team's responsibility and what's my responsibility? Welcome, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Right on the Money, the podcast dedicated to inspiring business owners to overcome their obstacles, grow their business, and lead greatly. I'm Janae K. Wright, and together with my host, Deshaun White, we're going to explore the vital aspects of running a thriving organization. In today's episode, we delve into the world of leadership and team building. As a CEO, one of the crucial decisions you'll face is knowing when it's time to expand your team. How can you identify that pivotal moment when hiring additional members becomes necessary? We provide you with valuable insights and strategies to guide you through this decision-making process, and we'll share practical tips and advice on how to identify and attract that best right-hand individual, someone who complements your strengths and helps you navigate the challenges of entrepreneurship.
Today's guest is Raj Thakkar. He is the founder and CEO of Charter School Business Management, CSBM, as well as FOREsight Financial Services for Good. He was named New York State Small Business Person of the Year by the US SBA. Raj has taught the course Understanding Social Enterprise, How to Use Business as a Force for Good at NYU Wagner. He has an MBA in finance from NYU Stern and a bachelor's in engineering science from Hofstra University. He is also a graduate of Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses. Raj is a native New Yorker who lives in Manhattan with his wife Nadia and daughter Raina. In addition to our CEO to CEO chat, we will be discussing Raj Thakkar's new book entitled Fiscally Secure: Prepare, Protect, and Propel Your Charter School with Responsible Financial Management. Raj is a renowned expert in charter school financial management, and his book provides essential guidance for charter school leaders. Let's dive right into the episode.
One of the things I always, when I'm talking to business owners and young entrepreneurs, one of those things that people take pride in is like, I do everything in the company myself, right? I am the accountant, I'm the HR manager, I do sales, I do all these pieces, and that pride, while I love it, I love the energy that comes from it. What I've noticed over the years and what my own personal anecdote is like, I don't know how to do the math. I've been trying to work with math for years, but I know that there is exponential growth of your business when you hire that first person, right? When you start to bring in other team, there is an absolutely exponential growth to your team. But as an accountant who runs an accounting firm, there's a difference between hiring the next accountant and hiring that COO, right? That higher level business partner, that right hand person to help you grow your business. And I've seen it, right? I've hired tons of accountants, and we kept going, right? We stayed the same course. But when I hired that COO, that my right hand person, who took a lot of that managerial stuff off my hands, it helped me focus on growing the business, right? It helped me get to that next level and really grow that business to a point where we are today. And, I've been always wondering this for a couple of years. And a couple of years ago, Raj jumped on the phone with me and he mentioned this statement and it's stuck in my brain so hard that my team probably got sick of hearing it. I said it over and over again all the time. And that statement is understanding today versus tomorrow as a business leader, right? And for me, that really meant how do I operate, right? Outside of my team, what is my team's responsibility and what's my responsibility? So Raj, I'd love you to jump into that at the beginning. Like, tell us where that came from. Tell us how did you come up with that theory and how does it work in your organization right now?
Sure. So about my company's about 17 years old at this point, and about 10 years in, I realized that I was having founder syndrome, and exactly what you were describing. My gut instinct was to try to control everything when the polar opposite is what was best for the organization. So we consulted, we hired a consultant who so masterfully broke the news to me that I think you're having founder syndrome, and then he interviewed my three key teammates at the time, who are still with us today, and gathered all the things that they love about working with me, and all the different things that they wish were different. And he, he kept the anonymity of what people said, but he came up with different themes and shared that, listen, you have an opportunity here to elevate these three key people into different roles that will really leverage you to do what you naturally want to do. So I was always focused on tomorrow, um, but I never called it that until the consultant put it on the whiteboard at NYU, because he was also a professor there. And he said, this is what I think needs to happen. Karen today, Raj tomorrow. And Karen is our president and chief operating officer. She was the first person who we elevated to the C level and took on that day to day. Later, it became Sharon, CFO, who's focused on all the numbers, and then later Steve, our chief growth officer, to take on all the sales and marketing responsibilities. But I'll pause there. Like, it was just such a powerful moment for us, but it was, that term was handed to us from the consultant.
No, I love that. I think that the idea of looking internally, right? I think that's part of it. Find those people who've been with you. To have someone with you for that long is awesome, right? I think people think of, oh, your business been open for 15, 17, 20 years, beyond more than 5 years. That's great. But have a key team members with you for 15, 20 years, that is incredible. How do you pull that off? How do you keep those high level CEOs engaged and active in your organization for that long a time?
So one is just building a lot of trust, right? So I do that through a lot of vulnerability and being totally honest and transparent about as much as I possibly can. Two is I want to make sure that they can own their own domain, right? So if Karen is focused on the operations and making sure everything's running smoothly because she's so darn good at it and way better than me at it, and same thing with Sharon with the finances and Steve with sales and marketing, then it's my job to get out of their way and stay out of their way, because I know and trust that they can do that role far better than I can to try to attempt to do all three of those, major areas. So, and then a lot of times I'm asking them questions. I'm asking them lots of questions, and so that they can own their own domain and be like, I'm fully in charge of this. Raj is not behind the scenes micromanaging me. No one in the history of the world has ever said, oh, I love being micromanaged. No one. Like, everyone wants their freedom and to do what they see fit, because they're the ones closest to the problems that they're facing. So therefore, they're the closest to actually being able to solve them. Not me, from the outside focused on tomorrow. Like, so I own my own domain of what's coming in the future. So
So let's be
that's,
honest with something.
yeah.
Let's be honest with something. That first week to a month that you started at, how how much anxiety did it build up in letting somebody completely run this part of your company and try to keep as hands off as possible? And how many times did you feel at it?
Oh yeah, it was a process, right? So there was an entrepreneurs organization conference that I had went to, uh, and there was definitely times I would meddle, because in the beginning it's very hard to let go of control. It's very hard to surrender and be like, all right, listen, this is fully you. But there was this book, and I'm trying to remember the name. I think it's called something like "What Made the Noise Go Away," and the book talks about a CEO and a COO who are building trust and having these weekly, or whatever frequency is right for you, these vulnerable conversations about the CEO describing what keeps him or her up at night, and the uh, and then the COO talking about how they're already handling it, or confirming that they understand what the CEO is nervous about, and this back and forth about all those different things that are really driving them crazy. Uh, and over time, and we did this over a 6 month period, Karen and I, and it was fantastic. And I was like, she hears me, she knows the things that are keeping me up at night, and she's on top of it, so it's going to be okay. So over time, uh, through those vulnerable conversations, because the brain of a visionary CEO versus the brain of a highly structured COO operate very differently. So you need those to like really work well together, but it takes time. Just like a marriage, just like anything, it's like you need to be on the same page and talk all these things out, even though you operate quite differently.
It is a marriage, right? Because it's the company is the marriage, and they have to have two people in there who are both on the same page, but knows what each other's strengths are to ensure that success of the organization. So I think let's back up a little bit. So
Mhm.
if today is about operations, right? Is about client centered. It's about growing the business. What is tomorrow for you? What is in that realm of duties that makes tomorrow happen for you?
Sure. So, one, it starts with a really clear, vivid vision. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, I did my first 10-year vivid vision in front of the whole company, where I laid out where I think the business is headed over the next 10 years and why. So I talk about the market conditions. I talk about where things politically are landing, and how we have the option, because you want to make sure that your team feels comfortable, your team feels safe, your team feels secure. Uh, if they're nervous, then that's not really helping anything. So what people talk about is how business has been like the Uberification of business, of where are we now, where are we headed, when are we going to get there. Like everybody wants to know exactly what's going on, and I tell them this is what I think is going to happen, but we're going to keep adjusting according to market conditions and where business is going. Um, so I would lay out that this is what I think is going to happen 10 years from now. This is what I think is going to happen 5 years from now. This is what I think is going to happen 1 to 3 years from now. So they can kind of chunk it out into short, medium, and long term. Uh, so beyond the vision, it's also me staying on top of the market conditions. So economic conditions, political conditions, operational potential risks that we have, and I'm staying on top of all the different risks that are going on, because it's my job to understand how those risks can impact the business and how we can still navigate as a result. So one risk for us, because we're concentrated in the charter school market, is if charter schools fall out of favor politically at the national level, at the state level, or at the local level, then I say, well, then we'll help other types of nonprofits through our second brand called FOREsight. So it's like a seesaw, and when charter schools are in favor, we'll serve more charter schools. If they fall out of favor, then we'll serve more nonprofits. And that's the comfort level that I want my team to feel, and know that, oh, this dude's on top of it. My job is safe and secure, because everybody is operating from a what's in it for me type of thing. And obviously so, like everyone's worried about their own situation, their own livelihood, their own families. Understandably so. You want to provide that security as best as you can without saying that they're guarantees, because there's no guarantees.
So and I love what you said about that, right? I think the idea of the business owner really being about the future of the organization, right? But like right now, I can hear some of my clients and some other business owners that talk to me saying, I don't have the capital to get to that level where I can hire number two. I don't have the funds. I don't have the structure for it, right? But I think it's important people understand it's not a hire six people tomorrow kind of number two, right? A number two can be a personal assistant, right? A number two can be just someone who's helping you with accounting. It's about pulling the resources that you need off of you so you can do other things, right? So I think as people are envisioning what this looks like, it can start off with a virtual assistant and start growing into more, right? You start off a virtual assistant with 10 hours a month, ends up being 30 hours a month, and you start growing because you realize how much work is getting done with assistance. And when you get to the level of being able to hire another person on your same level, the sweet seat, right? You start to realize how much you could actually do, right? When, I think like you, when I stopped doing accounting, right, the business grew, right? When I stopped thinking about the design and the systematic things that needs to be done, the business grew because I started thinking about growing the business. That was my job. That's my tomorrow. It's about growing the business. So I think having people understand what that looks like is an important aspect of that, and just being able to know that, like I said in the beginning, it's like there's an exponential factor to this, right? One person, 1 hour, 1 minute let me rephrase that, of a talented person can help your business grow, right? Because I know there's a lot of people who hire people, hire family members, hire people just to have help, and that becomes a disaster. But you also have to understand, I think for me, and how I think my function of how you have the consultant helped you was for me, and this is something I'm trying to offer to people, is I wrote down what my skill sets were, right? I understood what my weaknesses are, right? And one of those weaknesses I don't have, there's not 48 hours in a day for me to do everything I need to do today. So that's one of the things I had to manage. So understanding those kind of things helped me realize who I need to be that number two on my side, right? So how in that relationship building, right? You have a number two. Do they all report to you, or is there a hierarchy in your organization?
It's a great question. So our our president and chief operating officer reports to me, and then the CFO reports to her, as well as the chief growth officer reports to her. So that was a very distinct relationship. I still talk directly with our chief growth officer and chief financial officer, but functionally, the way it worked for us, each of their roles is focused on today, and I'm the only one focused on tomorrow. There's aspects of what they do between sales and marketing and making sure that it's, the organization is sustainable over time. But functionally better for us was for Sharon and Steve to, to flow through Karen than directly to me. That's what I preferred. That's what they preferred. It can totally look different as long as it's clear. That's what really matters.
So was there any? 'Cause I know as you grow an organization and everyone reports to you, to change that hierarchy usually causes some drama, right? People are, oh, I no longer have access to Raj anymore, right? How did you mitigate that? How did you help people understand that in the greater good, this is more important than that, and that you're still accessible to them?
Because I actually was still accessible to them. So I meet with every one of my teammates at least once a year in a one-on-one. I offer to meet with them for lunch or breakfast or over Zoom or Teams, and just I want to check in with them and see how everyone is doing. I'm very vocal on Microsoft Teams. I have a CEO Corner channel, and I'm posting different videos and thoughts of mine. I'm sharing with them at our all hands meetings. This is what I see happening in the market. Here's an update related to, you know, um, our forthcoming book. I'm just giving them the transparency so that they know they can come to me at any time anytime they have any questions. That accessibility is still there, and I think people like it better because it's just like, okay, because they're more likely to go to Karen if they need something than me because they feel nervous for whatever. I I see myself as a very approachable guy, but for some reason, the role itself can carry a megaphone and be intimidating. So having a few layers actually functionally works better as well.
Janae and Raj, you both started the conversation. I think it was actually Raj who brought this up, talking about founders syndrome. And we didn't get a chance to really talk about this in depth, but I'm wondering from both of you, what are some of the symptoms of founders syndrome? And what are some tips that you all can give our audience about finding the best right hand, especially if they're not already embedded in your organization?
So, from my perspective, founder syndrome is when the founder himself or herself is just trying to control way too much. And they don't trust their people to do what they say they're going to do. Um, and like Janae said before, there's not 48 hours in a day, there's 24, and there's just so much you can do. And if you don't trust your people, then it's often a mirror of their trust in you. Like they may not trust you, and you may be projecting a lot of the different things that you fear. It's yourself. As far as identifying a number two, you know, again, like Janae said, you have to really know yourself. Um, I know that I'm a visionary, less structured guy, and ironically, I was the number two of the, for the founder and executive director of Explore Charter School, where I started out. So I know the components of what it takes to be a great number two. But then when I was in the role of a visionary and CEO, just all of my traits completely changed, and I was all scattered, and I was having 100 meetings, that I'm trying to meet all these different people, and it's so hard to remain structured when you're out there trying to build a business and build trust in your capabilities. So it's just hard, but I'll stop there. I'm sure Janae has some insights.
No, I think you hit it on the head, right? I think the founder syndrome is really about control, right? Um, I think for me, my founder syndrome situation was because of you know unsuccessful other employees that I have hired, right? And it took some of that, as same as Raj, I've been the number two, and I have had other number two, so I've used to giving people leeway until I have to snatch it back, right? And I found the syndrome is a much harder snatch back because then you're really trying to do, here's an example. I had an employee a couple years ago. They went on vacation for about 2 weeks. They're international. When they came back, I created such a system around myself that they had no work to do, and they really came with me like, Janae, are you going to fire me? Right? I'm like, oh no, I didn't realize I was doing it. I didn't realize that that's what was happening. So I had to actually release some of those controls back to her because I realized that I needed to be in control of everything because I wasn't sure if anyone else can do the work I can do. Right? And it's while people feel like it shows like this kind of bravado, like I'm in control, I'm awesome, man. It actually shows a little bit of a weakness, right? Because you don't know how to delegate. You don't know how to release control. And I promise you, you're not sleeping. Your family is probably getting mad at you. You haven't done anything fun in the last couple of years, and it's going to internally affect you, right? A lot of founders get depressed, get sad because it's not a healthy way to work, right? So when you talk about founder syndrome, it's something that really needs to be released and find those people, and it's an important part of it. And as Raj illustrated, it's like finding what your strengths are, what your strengths and your weaknesses are, right? Because I think for me, as I'm growing the company, it was easier for me to find my weaknesses and add people into those spots, even though I'm still trying to control everything, because I knew I need to push certain things off me because I needed more time to do everything I needed to do. So I found my weaknesses and I started pushing those off. Then I started divining what the CEO's job is, right? Literally having a job description for the CEO of the organization. It may sound weird, but giving yourself, in the same way you evaluate employees and evaluate everybody else, giving yourself a self evaluation of what your strengths are, how you accomplish, and giving yourself the kind of um, goals for the year helps you define what your job is. And then you can start to really grow and hire those people who can be that number two. I think that the other part, and it all depends on different people, is if that person, if you need somebody who's going to compliment you or supplement you, right? It's a difference I've been a supplement for someone else who, a genius lady, really smart, but her business acumen was not there, right? And she had a very fiery temper. So I came in as the calm, level-headed person in the company. So everybody was like, it was always a calm situation. So finding those kind of things out about yourself, as Raj said, is an important aspect of really understanding what that number two is going to do for you and how who to find who you want to put in that position.
What are the most, and this question is for both of you. Um, there are a lot of benefits to hiring up your staff. There are a lot of benefits to finding the best right hand. But as it relates to both of you individually and as it relates to your businesses, what is one, you can only name one, one of the most tangible benefits that you all receive from understanding today versus tomorrow?
The biggest thing that comes to mind for me is just boundaries, right? Because they were in the before we defined it as today versus tomorrow. I was getting in Karen's hair, Karen was getting in my hair, and it was just like it was confusing. It was just like, what are you doing versus what am I doing? You keep asking me these questions, I keep asking you these questions. It just wasn't clear. So you need those boundaries of who owns which domain, and how are we defining this domain, what are the roles and responsibilities, and having that clarity can really create the alignment that you need in order to be rowing in the same direction. Otherwise we're rowing in opposite directions and we're going in circles, and that's just not, it's not helpful.
No, I think that's exactly it. I think I was going to say ownership, right? I think is the same concept. It's understanding who owns what in the organization, right? It sets the kind of boundaries that Roger's talking about. Understanding what your job is, and I think for a CEO, being able to in a way kind of like turn your back on that function because you don't need to worry about it, right, is like that person has ownership of this and you trust them enough that they're going to do what's best for the organization in that aspect, so that way you can blindly look towards what's tomorrow and keep things moving towards that direction. So I think those two concepts, right, the boundaries and ownership, really helps that CEO to kind of lose that founder syndrome a little bit more, because it's I'll say there's also the trust, but it helps them really understand and trust that person to do the job that is being designed for them.
This show is brought to you by Julo.shop. Experience more than just shopping at Julo.shop. It's a celebration of amazing products from Black-owned brands. Our product partners are like you and me. They had a vision, and now they're a part of the Julo family. We promise to bring you quality, convenience, and the selection that you deserve. Discover, experience, and enjoy something new at Julo.shop today. Visit www.julo.shop.
It's time for our CEO quick deep dive, where we have the privilege of interviewing Raj Thakkar, author of the new book, Fiscally Secure: Prepare, Protect, and Propel Your Charter School with Responsible Financial Management. In this enlightening session, we'll dive into the page of Raj's book, uncovering invaluable insights and strategies for charter school leaders. So, Raj, what inspired you to write the book about charter school fiscal management?
So it's part of our model. Originally, when I was launching charter school business management, it was going to be professional development for finance and operations people who work at charter schools. And what I found was a lot of those people said, "You know what? You obviously know what you're doing. Can't can't we just outsource this work to you?" So what we call it now is we can do the work for you, we can teach you how to do it, we can do a combination. And it's really the concept, it's like teach a person to fish or fish for them. It's a lot of trust is built as a result of teaching the quote unquote secret sauce. So a lot of our competitors will think that we're crazy. They're like, you're going to teach everything uh, that you've built up over your career? And I said, yes, absolutely. And they're like, why the heck would you do that? I said, well, one, it's the right thing to do. Two, I think, the government and powers that be purposely keep us in the dark about the numbers, and they don't want to teach us and make it part of a required part of the curriculum from K to 12 or from in college. They'll barely say, oh, it's an optional course if you want to learn this, because they see that the economic value of people getting into credit card debt or student loan debt or whatever, all these things is better. But I truly believe if people are empowered financially, um, the economy would be in far better shape, because they can make wise choices. They can invest well instead of having their money being grabbed away from all these large corporations. But I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm on a big soapbox, but the I wanted to further empower our clients. I wanted to have them understand the differences between an organization that can really properly support them with implementing responsible financial management versus someone who says they'll do it, but they don't really follow through properly.
Yeah, no, I understand that. That's definitely is the case in a lot of charter school nonprofit world. Um, can you explain to us the main difference between funding models for charter schools versus public schools?
Uh, Charter schools on average will get 75 cents on the dollar, and we're held accountable to all these different types of goals, when that same level of accountability does not exist in traditional public schools. They're they can be quote unquote dropout factories for 100 years, and they'll never get shut down because of the power of the unions. And I also believe in unions. They have a role, but when unions become far too strong and protect the interests of the adults over the interests of the children, that to me has gone too far. Um, the other main difference between traditional public schools and charter schools is traditional public schools have a district. They have a whole team that, for multiple schools, that district is running the accounting, running the payroll, uh, worrying about the audit, the budget, and all of that stuff. When I used to work with Morty Ballin at Explore Charter School, when he would introduce me, it would be like, "This is Raj. He is my district. He like single handedly, I'm running all of those different things." Um, so think of charter schools having to do all the things that a district does with less money to get all the work done. And that includes the finance, the accounting, the IT, all of these different things. So technically, the deck is stacked against charter schools. But you have all these very highly incentivized people who they're motivated to do right by children. And, because in this country, your zip code can essentially determine your future. If you're living in a tough neighborhood, you're gonna go to not one of the best schools. And if you can buy yourself into a better neighborhood, then you're most likely going to go to a great public school. Um, and it's the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. It's really unfortunate, but that's just how it works in this country. And and essentially charter schools provide an option where parents will vote with their feet and say, well, I know I'm zoned to go to this school, which didn't really do well by the students there. Let me look into these different charter schools, educate myself, and see what's the right learning environment for my child, and make sure they can get there, make sure the bus can pick them up, make sure we can get there on the bus or the subway, and do get my child a better education. I know it's a lottery, to get in, but it really is the jackpot when children who are zoned for a not so great school to get into a charter school, more often than not always.
What is a common misconception about charter school finance, and how does your book address it?
So this goes to, a lot of times you have academic people who are running these schools who are not business people or not operational people. So they will very often underestimate what it takes to run the non academic portions of a school. So they'll dismiss the operations as a little bit of clerical work, and they'll dismiss the accounting and finance as a little bit of bookkeeping that any old person can do, and just call accounting book data entry. And it's just like, please don't insult us that way, so just like if we say, oh, how hard is it to teach somebody, it's like, oh, unless you're a teacher, how would you know? Yeah, so say same thing. Unless you're an accountant or finance person, CFO or controller, how would you know? If you're a director of operations or a chief operating officer, you have no idea the number of emergencies that will go on around the school day. So it's showing the respect for those items. And yes, each one of those items individually may not be challenging, but when you have 100 competing priorities that are in your face, and you've got an upset parent at the front desk, you've got a child puking in the hallway, you've got some mess going on in the restroom, like, okay, go prioritize that. And then if they merge the role into a director of finance and operations, typically what will happen is it's 7 p.m. before you're processing payroll or cutting any checks to pay your vendors, because you've been Batman or Batwoman running around the building all day, handling all the emergencies. So it's the having one person do both things is the biggest mistake.
Can you share a personal experience implementing the process that's in your book?
Sure. So in the book, we distinguish between yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So we add the component of yesterday because the framework for the 10 cures, for the 10 common causes of financial mismanagement for us is having clarity, roles, responsibilities, policies, and procedures cuts across all three areas of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And the yesterday portion is the accounting, payroll, and audit preparation. So, and then real quickly, the today portion is the budgeting, financial reporting and forecasting, and cash management. And tomorrow is growth, mitigating risk, and then valuing the invaluable people and technology that are doing all of this work. So one of the best practices that we have is preparing for your audit throughout the fiscal year. Don't wait until the fiscal year is over. So you have to do your bank reconciliations on a monthly basis. You should do your quarterly payroll reconciliations as soon as your quarterly quarter ends, and you have the 941s from your payroll company, and you can tie out to the numbers in your accounting system. And if they're off, then fix it now instead of 9 months from now, 6 months from now. You can do your depreciation. You can essentially have your audit such that you only have to close the final quarter or the final month, instead of now I got to close the whole year and I didn't even realize that I was messing up all year. And then you're misleading your board, you're misleading your management team throughout the year because the numbers are all out of whack.
What are the three best practices in charter school that charter school can implement today to achieve balance of providing high quality education to their students while maintaining financial sustainability?
We're big fans of creating a budget that has assumptions for every single line item. If you're putting a number there, we want to know where that number came from. And if it came out of thin air, then say that, because you can't find that out later. So if you're saying, again, with the school example, we're going to have X amount in revenues. Okay, that's based on how much amounts per student that you're going to be getting, and how many students do you expect to have. So then I can challenge whether that number is real. So you're saying, well, your charter is approved for 200 kids by year 2, but you've budgeted for 300. One, you're not allowed to do that. Two, kids are schools are under enrolled because of all the migration during the pandemic to Florida and everywhere else in the country. So we want to be able to understand the assumptions and challenge the assumptions to see if they're reasonable or if they're just way too conservative, way too aggressive. Another best practice is, once you have that budget, you want to check against that budget and see what the financial reports and forecasts are having. So so many organizations will do budget versus actuals, which is looking backwards. You're looking at yesterday only. You need to look at where tomorrow's headed and where the numbers are heading through the end of the fiscal year, so that you can forecast what kind of surplus or deficit you're headed towards. And based on that forecast, then you can make sound decisions today based on where the numbers are headed tomorrow. So if your report says with the forecast that you're headed for a $500,000 surplus, okay, for those that reading specialists and math specialists that I've been wanting to hire, I can afford to do that now. If your forecast says we're going to be in the hole 100 grand, okay, well, how are we going to curtail some expenses? Are we going to fire a person or two? What do we need to do so you can make those decisions instead of being caught later and like, uh-oh, we can't cover payroll today. Like, how can you solve for that aside from drawing down on your credit line, and then the last best practice is to really, another one of our cures is control cash carefully. So, I don't want to quote Wu-Tang right now, but cash rules everything around me, right? Like it's the truth. So you have to make sure that you're really collecting your receivables as quickly as you possibly can. You're making sure to accordingly send out your payments. You have enough money for payroll. You have enough money for the rent. You have enough money for your critical bills like your health insurance and whatnot. You have to be on top of those numbers. But yeah, those are the main things that come to mind.
No, those are awesome. Those are definitely, I think, we both work in this world where those are some of the things that you put into place to ensure the end of the year is not a headache, right? Like you said, I've gone into many companies where, I'm doing a whole year worth of reconciliations because they haven't done one bank rec yet, haven't done any assessments against anything they did. So it's definitely an important part of ensuring that your business is financially secure and sound. And I like that the concept, right? It's not just about budget actuals looking backwards. It's about cash flow analysis moving forward as well. And the entire scope of that is what you need to look at as a business owner to understand where your business is going. Right? I always tell people if you have a good accountant, he can really give you the idea of where your company was and where it's going to go just from looking at your financials. If your financials are done appropriately and on time. So Raj, thank you. I appreciate it. I think the answers you just gave will give a lot of people some motivation and some ideas of how to really get their business to where they want to get to.
Thank you so much for listening to Right on the Money. We know there are millions of podcasts you could be listening to right now, and we are humbled that you chose this one. If you or someone you know would make a great guest on our podcast, a link to our guest request form will be provided in the show notes. Last and certainly not least, don't forget to give the gift of high-level business advice to the CEO in your life by sharing our podcast on both Apple and Spotify podcasts. See you next time.